Elliot and Megan had always been drawn to the unusual. So when they stumbled upon an old post on a local message board about the abandoned Black Hollow farm, they were immediately intrigued. It was the perfect place for an adventure, especially with the rumors of a silent watcher, a mysterious figure who was said to live on the farm. Locals whispered that the watcher had never spoken a word, and anyone who crossed onto the property would hear strange noises and feel eyes on them at all times. Some claimed the watcher had been there for decades, never aging, never leaving. The farm had been deserted for years, ever since the original owner disappeared without a trace, leaving his belongings behind in a hasty exit. It had become the stuff of local legend, a place no one dared approach after dark. But Elliot and Megan weren't afraid. They wanted to see for themselves. They packed a flashlight, a camera, and snacks and made their way out to Black Hollow Farm just as the sun began to set. The dusty road to the farm was overgrown with wild vines, and the air was thick with an eerie stillness. The trees along the road seemed to lean in, casting long dark shadows that gave the place a sinister feel. When they arrived at the farm, the house stood like a dark silhouette against the fading light. It was large, decaying, with broken windows and sagging walls. Old rusted farming equipment lay scattered across the yard, abandoned for what felt like a century. The silence was deafening. "This place feels wrong," Megan muttered, taking a step back toward the car. She shivered, rubbing her arms. "I don't know, Elliot. Maybe we should turn around." Elliot grinned, trying to reassure her. "It's just an old farmhouse, Megan. There's no watcher, just some silly rumors." But the moment they crossed the threshold of the rotting wooden gate, the air seemed to shift. A cold wind swept through the yard, and the leaves underfoot crunched like brittle bones. The house loomed in front of them, its broken windows like hollow eyes staring down at them. As they stepped closer, a faint scent of something rotten filled the air. Decay, mold, and something else. Something sour. Megan's flashlight flickered. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Elliot turned to her, but there was nothing behind them. Nothing but the trees and the thickening shadows. "Probably just a shadow," he said, trying to sound calm. But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The front door to the house was ajar, creaking in the wind. They pushed it open and stepped inside, their flashlights sweeping across the room. The dust and cobwebs were so thick, it looked like the house had been untouched for years. The air was stale, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. They explored the house room by room, finding nothing but empty spaces, old furniture covered in dust, and faded photographs that seemed to watch them with eyes that weren't there anymore. But the further they ventured, the stronger the feeling grew. They weren't alone. A low creaking noise came from the attic, followed by a soft shuffle, like something moving just out of sight. Megan gasped, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" Elliot nodded, his pulse quickening. He pointed to the stairs leading up to the attic. "We should check it out." Reluctantly, Megan followed, her heart pounding in her chest. The stairs groaned under their feet as they climbed, the darkness pressing in around them. As they reached the top, they froze. The attic was empty except for an old rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth as though someone had just left. There were no signs of life, but the chair continued to rock, slowly, methodically. Megan's hand tightened around the flashlight. "This is too much. We need to leave." But before they could turn around, they heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible, coming from the far corner of the attic. A voice, hoarse and dry, as though it had not spoken in years. "Go." It was just one word, but it was enough to freeze them both in place. The sound wasn't coming from the chair. It was coming from the shadows. "Who's there?" Elliot called out, his voice shaky. No answer. Just the creaking of the chair. Then, the whispers grew louder, and they heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, as if someone was approaching them from behind. But when they turned, no one was there. "Run!" Megan shouted, grabbing Elliot's arm and pulling him toward the stairs. But the moment they tried to leave, the door to the attic slammed shut with a deafening crash. The air turned cold, and a low growl echoed through the room. Deep, guttural, like something was breathing right behind them. They turned to look, but all they could see was darkness. The whispers continued, growing louder, almost frantic now. And then came the voice again, closer this time, almost right behind them. "Leave, or stay forever." Terrified, Elliot yanked the attic door open, and they bolted down the stairs. They stumbled through the house, the floorboards seeming to groan louder with every step, as though the house itself was trying to hold them in. The whispers followed them, always just out of reach, like a silent watcher, patiently waiting. When they reached the door, it slammed shut in front of them, blocking their exit. The air was thick with the scent of rotting wood, and the darkness closed in tighter, making it harder to breathe. Megan's scream echoed through the house as she felt something cold and clammy touch her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. The door finally opened, and they stumbled outside into the night, gasping for air. They didn't look back, running as fast as they could toward the car. As they sped away from Black Hollow Farm, they both felt the heavy weight of being watched by something unseen. The next day, the house was still there, but the farm seemed to be watching them, lingering on the edge of their minds. Locals would later tell them that no one had lived at Black Hollow for decades, and that the Watcher had been waiting long before they arrived. And though they left the farm behind, the whispers stayed with them, haunting their every step. Have you ever found yourself hopelessly lost, confused, and feeling like you were being watched? Beware. There are terrifying and mysterious beings that few have ever seen and lived to talk about. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and follow us for more. Join us on TikTok and YouTube for more bone-chilling chronicles. If you dare,